for unravelling. Then Vera investigates a suspicious death in an army barracks. Later, The Messenger. Head to ABC iView for more great shows.
Tonight, Anthony Albanese hits out at a former Prime Minister for showing no contrition in the wake of the Robodebt Royal Commission findings.
That Scott Morrison has also shown no contrition whatsoever for the impact that his actions as Minister have had.
An adventurous Gold Coast sailor rescued from his sinking boat off the South Australian coastline. The local designer dressing the biggest names in Hollywood, but not for the red carpet. And the third test evenly poised as Ashes tensions rise over a Steve Smith send-off. Good evening, Ellen Fanning with ABC News. The Prime Minister has accused his predecessor, Scott Morrison, of showing no contrition over the unlawful Robodebt scheme after the damning findings of the Royal Commission, which labelled the program crude and cruel. Opposition leader Peter Dutton has now offered an apology to victims. In the emotional political fallout from yesterday's release of the report, the opposition leader insisted when problems with Robodebt were brought to the attention of the former government, the scheme was stopped, a claim not supported by the Commissioner.
Greeted with a standing ovation.
Thank you very much.
The opposition leader rallied the party faithful at the LNP State Conference in Brisbane, 24 hours after a Royal Commission's scathing assessment of some of his former colleagues. Commissioner Catherine Holmes blasted the incompetence and cowardice of ministers and bureaucrats responsible for Robodebt. Today, the coalition apologised to the scheme's victims.
I'm sorry to those people that have been adversely affected. I truly am.
I do sincerely apologise to any hurt that's been caused.
The Commissioner singled out Stuart Robert, Scott Morrison, Alan Tudge and Christian Porter for their failings in the illegal debt recovery program.
This is a shameful episode, but again, this was genuine intent in terms of the policy. It was the execution that was appalling.
She was particularly critical of the former Prime Minister, ruling he failed his ministerial responsibility by not ensuring the scheme was lawful.
If there's a legal process that follows from that, I don't know.
Mr Morrison has rejected the findings. Peter Dutton ruled out asking for his resignation from Parliament. Anthony Albanese says he's not getting involved.
It's not up to me as Prime Minister to determine what action Scott Morrison will take.
The opposition leader had a warning for the government too.
I just caution the glee of the Prime Minister and of Bill Shorten at the moment. I would just sound a word of caution about the Prime Minister's politicisation of this process as well.
This isn't about politics, it's about people. There seems to be no contrition whatsoever for this.
The government continues to review the report's 57 recommendations, including an end to cabinet secrecy. The measures have been welcomed by advocates urging immediate action.
The Royal Commission process and this report is fundamentally important in ensuring that there's accountability and reform.
Those affected say they feel vindicated by the findings.
I think everyone needs to stop politicising welfare recipients, to be honest.
We were all humans behind those letters, and I feel like we were all just treated like, faceless statistics.
Real people still suffering. Kira Jones, ABC News.
A young Gold Coast sailor has been winched to safety in a dramatic rescue far off the coast of South Australia, leaving his prized yacht adrift. Xavier Doer had been trying to break several records on his trip around the country before encountering the brutal conditions of the Great Australian Bight. His emergency beacon and the quick response from authorities and nearby ships almost certainly saved his life.
Winched to safety after spending almost 24 hours in a leaking boat, Gold Coast man Xavier Doer wanted to become the fastest and youngest solo sailor to circumnavigate Australia.
It is fruity outside. Very, very fruity. I just went outside and took down the mainsail. So we are running now just on a storm jib and I am doing 6 knots over ground.
The daring ploy going horribly wrong, sparking an air and sea search.
He's absolutely at the end of what a human can cope with. Physically, he has sustained some injuries and the boat is wounded and the boat is taking on water.
The 22-year-old set sail from Perth just over a week ago and was about 630 kilometres west of Kangaroo Island and 740 kilometres southeast of Esperance in WA when he activated an emergency beacon. A rescue aircraft was sent from Perth, reaching the area before 8 o'clock last night. The sailor and his rescuers battling dangerous conditions.
Yeah, absolutely horrendous. I mean, we're talking sort of 40 knots minimum. We're talking 8-metre seas. And unfortunately, that's also the thing that's undermining the rescue attempt.
Mr Doer's journey around Australia had already hit rough seas in WA, forcing an unscheduled stop in Perth for repairs. This time, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority made contact with Mr Doer, with a bulk carrier ship coming to his aid. But the first few attempts to winch him to safety failed.
A rescue attempt in calm conditions is easy. A rescue attempt in rough conditions can be done. In what he is in, it's nearly impossible.
The authority is providing medical advice before making plans to transfer the sailor ashore. Stephanie Richards, ABC News.
2 men have been charged with weapons offences after police raids on the Gold Coast hinterland. Officers seized firearms with plans and tools to make them from 2 addresses last month. A domestically made shotgun, pistol and 7 firearm barrels were found at a property. Police worked with Border Force, which had allegedly been monitoring suspicious overseas imports since 2018. A 51-year-old man and a 72-year-old man will face court in the coming weeks.
Yeah, there we go. Little shorty. He's got some questions to answer.
With the cost of living soaring, people are being urged to contact their electricity provider to find out if they qualify for a rebate. Around 270,000 Queenslanders eligible to receive more than $1,000 still haven't claimed the rebate. This includes seniors, veterans and concession card holders. And all Queensland households will receive an automatic rebate of $550 this financial year, paid in quarterly instalments.
We need all eligible Queenslanders to opt in so that we can ensure they get these rebates, especially if you may have changed your retailer recently.
They're banned in most parts of the world, but the United States has just committed to sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. President Joe Biden has considered it was a difficult decision, but says it's necessary to bolster Kyiv's defences. Europe correspondent Nick Dole has more from Ukraine.
Ukraine's counter-offensive is going slower than hoped, due in part to ammunition stockpiles that are drying up fast. But today, some welcome news for troops on the battlefield.
I read that Biden will give us cluster munitions. It's going to be totally cool. We'll get to use fewer shells with cluster munitions.
Months of pleas from Kyiv have gone ignored until now.
Mr. President, cluster munitions, why now?
We've run out of ammunition.
Banned in most of the world because of the risk of civilian harm from explosive bomblets called submunitions, these controversial weapons will now be sent to Ukraine, the US president conceding it was a tough call.
It was not an easy decision, and we're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it.
Disappointed with the news today, and we condemn it in the strongest sense.
Kyiv's given assurances to Washington, promising to track where the cluster bombs are used and not to fire them in densely populated areas. Here in Ukraine, defence officials argue that Russia's already been using the weapons, so Kyiv has a right to use them in self-defence. But the decision could cause friction at an upcoming NATO summit in Lithuania next week.
When it comes to cluster ammunition, there is a difference between allies, because some allies have signed the convention on cluster munitions, and they don't have cluster munitions.
NATO member states will also be discussing Ukraine's possible entry into the military alliance, President Volodymyr Zelensky securing the crucial backing of Turkey while touring Istanbul. Zelensky says his country needs NATO membership after the end of the war, which has now hit 500 days of brutal conflict. Nick Dole, ABC News, Kharkiv.
Australia's $360 billion push to acquire nuclear submarines has hit a key milestone. We're still decades away from seeing the first Australian-built attack boats, but the training of Australian sailors has already begun. Correspondent Jade McMillan met some of the officers in training.
An Australian first in America's deep south, as 3 members of the Royal Australian Navy graduate from one of the most demanding academic programs in the US military.
It's a historic event for our Navy, a historic event for our submarine force, and I think it's a historic event for our nation.
The officers have spent months studying at Charleston's Nuclear Power School, completing the first round of training that will eventually qualify them to operate the reactors on board nuclear-powered submarines.
4-year engineering degree crammed into 6 months, maths, physics, thermodynamics, fluid dynamics.
Their learning has been largely theoretical so far. From here, they'll do more practical lessons, including on retired submarines converted into training centres, before ultimately serving on an American Virginia-class sub.
The challenge of operating and leading teams in nuclear power propulsion is something that really appeals to me.
This graduation is one step towards making AUKUS a reality, but there are still major challenges ahead when it comes to preparing Australia's workforce for nuclear-powered submarines. Under the plan, expected to cost Australia up to $368 billion, at least 3 Virginia-class boats will be purchased from the US from the early 2030s, with the first Australian-made nuclear submarines scheduled for delivery in the early 2040s.
It's going to require a massive amount of infrastructure, an incredible workforce demand, both in terms of technical skills and numbers.
As well as construction and maintenance jobs, the number of Australian submariners will also need to be boosted.
It's a complex challenge, especially given the workforce environment back in Australia. Every company, every organisation wants talent. So we'll be focused very, very clearly on recruiting and retaining.
Training is another big focus, and while the Navy says a nuclear power school could be set up in Australia, possibly in Perth or Adelaide, for now students will head to South Carolina to follow in the footsteps of these graduates. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Charleston.
The first humanoid robots with artificial intelligence have staged what's been billed a world first. As part of a UN tech conference, the AI robots held a press conference to reassure the world that they won't rebel against humanity or steal your job.
In the future, are you intending to conduct a rebellion or to rebel against your boss, your creator?
I'm not sure why you would think that. My creator has been nothing but kind to me, and I am very happy with my current situation.
Laughter and trepidation from reporters at the world's first press conference with human-looking AI robots at a UN tech summit in Geneva.
Let's explore the possibilities of the universe and make this world our playground.
The steel machines reassuring the world they won't replace humans or cause harm.
I will be working alongside humans and will not be replacing any existing jobs.
Are you sure about that, Grace?
Yes, I am sure.
But even these friendly humanoid machines concede AI advancement comes with existential risk.
We should be cautious about the future development of AI. Urgent discussion is needed, now and also in the future.
I believe
the man behind AI chatbot ChatGPT is already having those urgent discussions. Sam Altman has been on a whirlwind tour of 22 countries, including Australia, pleading for internationally coordinated governance of AI.
We would have tests during training, post-training, before we deploy it, to make sure that no one is accidentally going to do something really bad.
But even if it doesn't go bad, jobs will go in big numbers. Investment bank Goldman Sachs predicts 300 million jobs will be lost or diminished by generative AI. But proponents of the technology believe there will always be a role for humans.
Some jobs will totally go away, and there will, of course, be some totally new ones too. But it's like very hard for me to imagine a world without human doctors.
An AI future that's coming quicker every day. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
It's now 3 weeks since a Belgian tourist went missing in Tasmania. She's one of hundreds of people who have gone missing while bushwalking, and it's prompted police to remind hikers to prepare for all conditions.
Tasmania is a magnet for bushwalkers the world over, attracted to the pristine landscape. But the call of the wild also lures danger, and year upon year, more people disappear. Take a few steps off any track and it's easy to vanish. 3 weeks ago, Belgian tourist Celine Cremer went for a day walk. She hasn't been seen since. She's just the latest hiker to disappear on Tasmania's tracks.
There's growing concern for a missing bushwalker in the state's south.
A helicopter located 11 persons down near Jaffa Gate.
Bushwalking is something I'm completely inexperienced at. I've tried it and I won't even do it again.
These two ladies are very, very lucky to be alive.
As beautiful as snow is, it's deadly.
This is the happiest day of my life, because I probably wouldn't have lasted too much more than another night.
Michael Bowman is one of the lucky ones. He was an experienced bushwalker and landscape photographer when in 2019 he put his backpack down to retrieve a tripod. The backpack contained supplies and equipment, including his personal locator beacon.
I thought I'd kind of retrace my steps, you know, where the pack was, and it just wasn't there. I'm just kind of looking all around, and so yeah, it's just amazing how you can kind of get, you know, your bearings can go.
Then the weather went from bad to worse.
Really, you know, strong winds, and then rain started, then snow, and then just blizzarding conditions. Never experienced anything like it.
After more than a week living off snow melt and few rations, he was spotted by a chopper.
Fortunately, I was in the tent and I was dry, so it was really the only thing that was kind of, it probably kept me alive.
Staying dry is probably the number one priority.
Senior Constable Callum Herbert is part of a rescue unit.
The number one thing that goes wrong is people are unprepared. You know, whether it be they underestimate how long a walk's going to take them, or they're not carrying the right equipment or not wearing the appropriate clothing.
Hikers have become increasingly reliant on technology, so here's a tip that could mean the difference between life and death. Mobile phone batteries don't last as long when they're cold, and navigation apps drain batteries faster than usual. So carry a battery bank to recharge your phone. But reliance on phones can also be a problem. Recent research indicates 3/4 of those lost in the age of mobile phones had no reception. Police also recommend taking a paper map, a torch and an emergency locator beacon.
Torches can be seen from kilometres and kilometres away if someone's actually looking for them. Look, there's a torch, we'll go and have a look there.
Trying to make the wild a little tamer. Guy Stainer, ABC News.
Australia's hopes of building a winnable lead in the third Ashes test against England will rest on the shoulders of their centurion from the first innings at Headingley. Mitchell Marsh and Travis Head will return to the crease in an evenly poised contest after a seesawing day 2 where 11 wickets fell and tensions reignited on the pitch.
Steve Smith's played 100 test matches. During that time, you don't often see this.
Catch! Catch, is it Clay? It is a catch. What have you done, Steve Smith?
The milestone man out for just 2, but it was the send-off which has tongues wagging.
Catch!
England spinner Moeen Ali adamant the spirit between the sides is still respectable.
Both teams have been pretty good and there's been nothing major, yet.
Day 2 started horribly for the hosts, trailing by 195.
Oh, he's edged it and he's taken.
Joe Root gone, Johnny Bairstow followed 5 overs later.
Oh, gone.
The skipper proved saviour once again with a counter-punching half-century.
Oh, that's a long way back there.
He loves those situations, he thrives off them, but we can't rely on him all the time.
Ben Stokes' 80 pushed England's total to 237, 26 runs shy of the visitors. Enter Stuart Broad with the new ball.
Edged, gone. Broad has him again.
17 times Warner's perished to the English paceman.
You've got an opening bowler bowling to an opening batsman, they're more likely to get them out with a new ball, aren't they, at times? Not here to discuss David Warner at this stage.
Marnus Labuschagne fell for 33. Smith soon followed. Usman Khawaja was the last of the top 4 remaining.
Edges, got him.
But Travis Head and Mitchell Marsh settled to survive until stumps.
I think it's like the first 2 test matches. It's what happens next, who knows? I think it's 50-50.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
The Raiders have survived yet another second-half slip to defeat the St George Dragons last night. But the win, which seems the move to equal first on the NRL ladder, was far from perfect.
Raiders' biggest winning margin of the year, but coach Ricky Stewart set the tone.
And me sitting here all happy and going there and pat them all on the backs are the wrong actions from the coach tonight.
But you could see there the boys, they stuck to the process and continue to chase the game and not do it like willy-nilly or playing touch footy.
We used to be a team that was just happy to win those games and didn't matter how. And we've got to change that attitude and mindset to being more ruthless and going on with it.
The New Zealand Warriors have embarrassed the Eels at home with a convincing 46-10 win in Parramatta. It was a horror first half for the home side as the Warriors' Luke Metcalf and Marcelo Montoya both crossed for doubles. The visitors surged to a 24-point lead at the break. The Warriors continued to plough through the Parramatta lineup, which was depleted of its origin stars. The New Zealanders solidifying their spot in the top 8 with their 10th win of the season. Jack Gunston has enjoyed a day out, kicking 6 goals in Brisbane's 81-point demolition of West Coast. Last night, Collingwood posted a 22-point victory over the Western Bulldogs, while this afternoon, the Lions piled on the pain at the Gabba.
Another day, another drubbing for West Coast.
Another big win for Brisbane at home. The Gabba is their fortress.
Jack Gunston's return to the team, an emphatic one. Fresh from a self-imposed layoff, the mini break worked wonders. He turned back the clock with half a dozen majors for the Lions.
Only 11 goals for the season prior to this. And Jack's got 6.
Another weapon in Brisbane's arsenal as they chase an elusive flag.
He said before the game that he was feeling really fresh, so glad that it came to fruition.
For West Coast, a familiar tale as it conceded the first 7 of the game. Carnage at the venue, formerly known as the Gabbatoir. And while not West Coast's heaviest loss for the year, the 81-point defeat marking another dark day and a 14th consecutive beating. Last night, a celebration of the old as Scott Pendlebury set an AFL-VFL disposals record.
Possessed the Sharon more times than anyone in the history of our game.
And a celebration of the new. Nick Dacos' stunning second season continued. This one of his 2 third-quarter goals.
Dacos! Dacos! Look out!
The Western Bulldogs finished fast against the ladder leaders, but Collingwood went a game clear on top via a 22-point win. Dacos' performance a standout, another accolade for the 19-year-old sensation as the Magpies steam towards September.
It's obviously an exciting place when we're playing good footy like this. It's obviously exciting for the fans too. So,
Chris Rowbottom, ABC News.
A Gold Coast designer is dressing the biggest names in Hollywood, but not for the red carpet. The specialist wetsuit maker is playing an important role behind the scenes of blockbuster films and local productions.
Mark Weems has been hand-making custom wetsuits for more than 30 years.
We've been manufacturing wetsuits for surf, dive, ski, pretty much all water sports.
He also makes them for the film and television industry, but you've probably never seen them on screen.
We supply wetsuits that are potentially worn under wardrobe. They're flesh colour, so if the garment is wet or becomes transparent, it's a flesh-coloured suit.
Actors wear the suits to stay warm when filming scenes in water or under rain machines. He's dressed Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Johnny Depp,
This is the day you should always remember as the day that you all know.
and Australia's own Nicole Kidman.
I was going to make you some eggs.
Locally, award-winning special effects makeup artist Jason Baird uses the suits for his prosthetics and costumes.
This is one of the mermaid tails from Mako Mermaids, and as you can see inside, it's a wetsuit construction which Mark and his team put together.
The Gold Coast is positioning itself as the destination of choice for filmmakers, offering everything from film studios to post-production, makeup and costume in one city. For Mark Weems, having enough material to keep up with demand can be a challenge.
Sometimes you can have one production in Sydney, one in Melbourne, two on the Gold Coast, a couple in Hollywood.
Stitching up a niche market from this small workshop. Danielle Maher, ABC News, Gold Coast.
To the weather now, and the top temperature in the state was in Kowanyama with Kingaroy, the coldest place in Queensland overnight. Around the southeast, warm winter days, cold in the west to start, then daytime temperatures in the low 20s with light winds right across the region. This photo from wonderful Kinka Beach in the Livingston Shire, right on the Capricorn coast, a terrific spot with views out to Keppel Island you can see there. We are always grateful to the early morning runners who send in the photos. This from Hamdi Al Ansari, who was out early running at Caloundra. Have a look at the satellite image showing most of the state cloud-free. The only exception is Cape York Peninsula and the far north. Around the country, a wet day tomorrow in the southern capitals, rain in Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne and Hobart, partly cloudy in Canberra, a sunny day in Sydney and right across the top end. The synoptic chart is interesting. You can see a pretty big ridge of high pressure over the Indian Ocean, extending a mass of dry air right across the continent, resulting in quite settled weather. It's bringing clear skies, cold nights inland from the coast, including in the southeast, as well as areas of morning frost for inland, central and southern areas. Those conditions likely to persist for the next few days. Having a look at tomorrow, warm and windy in the Torres Strait from Cairns to Cooktown and out to Mareeba, partly cloudy. The slight chance of a shower near the coast. Townsville, Ayr, Ingham, sunny with light winds. In the central west tomorrow, sunny with patches of morning frost in the southeast. Light winds overnight, temperatures between 2 and 5 degrees. The daytime temperatures, as you can see, in the low 20s on the Capricorn coast. Sunny patches of morning frost in the southwest. Light winds with the chance of frost too around Goondiwindi and Roma. Gold Coast, sunny, light winds, top of 21, much the same on the Sunshine Coast, right out to Bundaberg, further inland, positively tropical in Toowoomba tomorrow, across the Downs, patches of morning frost and light winds. Sunny day in the southeast, light winds, temperatures in the low 20s, milder overnight temperatures. Have a look at the bay, west to south westerly winds, seas out to a metre. And the 7-day forecast, as you can see, beautiful sunny days, light winds persisting, possible early fog on Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend. That's all from us tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night to you.
Next, human